My name is Carlyn Yandle. I'm based in Vancouver, BC. I have always been a maker. Ever since I could make God's eyes out of popsicle sticks, and I advanced from there. So I've always been making, but my career has been print journalism. So I spent the majority of my adult life in newsrooms, running newsrooms, or being a beat reporter, and then later on being a columnist. So I have two pieces in the show. The first piece is called Crossover, and the second piece is called Cluster. So the first piece is a design for the scramble-type crosswalk in the historic fishing village of Steveston. And that was a very immediate idea. It came to mind because I was the editor of the long-standing community newspaper out here for some years, and I knew a lot about the history of the area and also about the issues that were sort of hitting Steveston at that point. One of the main issues was saving the Phoenix Net loft. So that was sort of in the back of my mind as I was looking at the call for a design for this scramble type crosswalk. So I immediately thought about this should be a net, and the idea of a net connecting the past to the present, and also the net as an idea of a safety zone for pedestrians, sort of a way to catch people. And so then, as soon as I came up with that idea, I went to my macrame books and I started to revisit the knotting that I learned back at age 13, and the edge knots and the Josephine knots and the square knots, and just started to play with it. And that's really how I come up with a lot of my ideas. I just sort of mine my muscle memory, and then from that point, ideas come as I make, and then then the ideas sort of lead to more making. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. So the second piece is called Cluster, and it's a completely different experience than the first one, because this one I'm seeing it from the design phase, the concept phase, all the way to the end when it's installed. And it's going to be installed on the top of the last guideway of the Canada Line in the city centre of Richmond. I wanted something that felt light and exciting, but also had a little bit of a punch to it, a little bit of a visual punch. I eventually came up with the idea of a cluster of pipes, and that would sort of visually look like they were extruding from the end guide rail. And that would, for me, that was kind of like a very large representation of maybe a fiber optic cable or exhaust pipes or that sort of thing that just kind of come out. While the crossover was quite simple, this one was full of complexities because there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that project. So it wasn't just a matter of getting a bunch of brightly colored pipes sort of bound together and throwing them up there. This is a height above where people walk. It's a high pedestrian zone. It's an area with a lot of vibration. I love the challenge of trying to find something in that space, but it was a little unnerving trying to get my head around all the structural engineering. There's a lot of complexity, but I think that the original idea still remains. And that is, if you're a passing commuter coming down the main drag in a car or in a bus, waiting to connect to the Canada Line, as you approach, you see the circle within circle kind of pattern that you might see with a severed fiber optic cable. But as you pass by, the whole sculpture turns into horizontal lines, which I kind of relate to hard edge abstract painting with these high vibrant colors that are all selected based on the color-coded wires of fiber optic cables.